5 years ago, I joined a gym for the first time in my life, and I loved my gym. It was like literally, I think, 2 minutes door to door from my house to my gym, and I loved it. I would go almost every morning, and I would do the treadmill. I would go on the treadmill for 20 minutes, and I loved it. And then about 2 weeks ago, I had got a really unpleasant surprise when one morning I showed up to my gym, and the door was locked, and there was just a little sign on it, and it said, "We have gone bankrupt. No more gym," basically. So I was really, really disappointed. I was like, "Oh no, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do without my gym?" But what I ended up doing is going like so since my gym closed. I've just been going every day on walks. Instead of going 20 minutes on a treadmill, I spend 20 minutes or a little bit more just going on like a brisk walk somewhere. So like a few days ago, I walked over down to by the old city and even past that towards near Damascus Gate. And I was like, wow, the old city. It was like so wonderful to see it. Like, and I was thinking, I could have just been in the gym, like just going, just like looking at like the time counter. But actually, instead of that, I'm actually going to see an actual real life place. This morning, I walked over towards the central bus station, and on the way, I saw the Knesset, and I saw like all the neighborhoods, the beautiful new neighborhoods behind the Knesset, and it just looked like so beautiful, and it was sort of misty and beautiful. I was like, wow! Instead of just looking at the numbers, 17 minutes or whatever on the treadmill, I'm actually looking at a real life place, and it reminded me a bit about my mind. Made me think about my mind, and how my mind works. It made me remember how often I'm like in a treadmill in my mind. How like I'm sort of like thinking all of these thoughts that aren't taking me anywhere. I'm just on the mental treadmill, like okay, well she did this, and then I did this, and what's gonna be then, and oh no, what will happen then, and how am I gonna cope, and why did she do that, and then I said this, and then da, da, da. I went to this whole mental just messed up, kind of confused, kind of mental situation, a treadmill, which isn't taking me anywhere, and it made me think about how much I would like to be, living a life that's actually sort of, taking me places and using my mind in a way that's going to be taking me places in a positive, productive way, and not in this sort of like messed up. Someone once mentioned it, described this sort of state of mind as like sort of sticky spaghetti. Like when you overcook the spaghetti and you don't put in any oil in the water, and it's like really sticky and all stuck together. So sometimes I get into that sticky spaghetti kind of mind. Like, how do I get out of that? So I wanted to mention. I just read something really interesting. In this week's issue of Family First, written by Azriela Jaffe in their health section, something very short, but it says 47%. 47% is the amount of time our minds wander while we're awake. 47% of the time our minds are wandering, according to Harvard researchers. There's a downside, though, to this thought drifting. It affects your mood for the worse. 2,250 subjects in the study were more likely to report feeling happy when totally absorbed in a task, whether it was exercising or reading. So if you're down, choose an activity that requires focused attention, and you'll feel your funk lift. Okay, so this is something that once actually I heard this from Dr. Miriam Adahan many years ago. But she was saying, like, if you're sort of in a down mood, something you can do is just sort of get out of your sort of treadmill of thoughts and actually do something. Wash some dishes, go and buy something at the store. Write an email, pick up the phone and talk to somebody. Do something instead of just like getting into this stuck spaghetti, kind of mode. Something that I recently learned, something that really, 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 I think, really mind-blowing for me, which is really, really helping me in recent weeks to get out of my sort of stuck spaghetti kind of mode of thinking, treadmill kind of stuck spaghetti mode. So Rabbi Niven, my teacher of the personal development chaburas, he describes this kind of like when we get into this kind of thinking, like in our minds, he says our minds become haunted houses. You go to a haunted house, and you look around, and like all the lights are off, and there's like sort of creaky doors and sounds of like screaming, and you see a Frankenstein and a Dracula, and it just looks like really, really creepy, but like you know it's not true. You know, like that this, that the Frankenstein is just like some sort of college student, doing like acting, pretending to be pretending to be Frankenstein. You know that the Dracula is just like somebody getting paid, $7 an hour to put on that costume. You know it, and you know that like as soon as they, that when they clean up the haunted house at the end of the day and they turn on the lights, it's not going to be scary anymore. So our minds are like that. Our minds are haunted houses. We get onto like these thoughts, and I'm not saying that there is like a kernel of truth in like our thoughts. Like a certain discussion did take place, and maybe we're worried about something that actually could happen. But so often we get into like this whole haunted house. Like what's gonna be, and and how can I possibly cope if that happens, and why did she do this, and how like getting into all of this sort of like imaginary haunted house kind of thinking. So I know, like, I do that all the time. In fact, I spent quite a large and embarrassing large chunk of my life I spend in that kind of haunted house kind of mode. And unfortunately, that haunted house kind of mode, it really, really shapes the way I see the world. So what can we do? So Rabbi Niven suggests, it's more complicated than this, but just like al regel echad, like in a very brief, sort of like just like one line summary of something which we learned over the course of many hours, is just to, instead of fighting the thoughts, I tend to, like, when I have thoughts like this, I tend to fight them. Like, I think, well, how could I judge that person favorably? Or, how could I rethink the situation? Or how could I, or trying to convince my mind to see the haunted house in a different way. But Rabbi Niven says it's much, much easier than that. What you just need to do is just realize you're in a haunted house. Just realize that what you're experiencing and the sort of disempowered, scared, freaking out kind of feeling is that it's just to know, I'm in a haunted house. I'm in a haunted house. And just knowing that, it can sort of negate sort of all the scary haunted house kind of feelings and bring your mood up and help you to think more carefully, help you to think in a more constructive, real kind of way. So I want to bless all you Jewish moms. So next time you're feeling like you're in this sort of treadmill-y, haunted house, sticky spaghetti kind of mode, one idea is Azrael Jaffe suggests, is to do something constructive. Next you can do a mitzvah, read a book to your son, cook something, make a phone call, go out and buy something, wash some dishes. Do something that actually like brings you down to like the earth and not in like the sort of like sort of haunted house kind of mode. Another thing is just to realize when you're feeling all like freaking out, that just to remember you are in a haunted house, and you don't want to be there. We don't want to be there, right? We don't want to be there. And the best thing about realizing you're a haunted house is it enables you to see the world with new, more positive, sort of sunshiny eyes, to really see the world as it really actually is. So I want to bless all of you Jewish moms with a Chodesh Tov and a wonderful, wonderful week. Kol Tov.